the Over and Back Classic NBA podcast. I am Jason, and with me as usual is Rich. Hello, Rich.
What is going on?
Not a whole lot, honestly, it's been kind of a crazy off season, at least recently. Some big news kind of happening. Usually we're in the dead part of the season, but and actually the season's getting really reasonably close to preseason starting. So and then the season after that. So I don't know. I was about to say nothing's going on, but actually things are happening.
Yeah, we got some hot training camp coming up pretty soon. We got a bunch of players that won't play in the NBA playing big minutes in games. I mean, how can you not get excited about that?
How could I not? No. Yeah. We got trade demands, Jimmy Butler being weird, Mark Cuban being creepy, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, perfect.
It's fun. And big news recently is we've got a brand new set of Hall of Famers.
We do a really cool set of Hall of Famers, too. This is one, and this is going to probably happen for quite a while, at least for my generation. I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm starting to see my guys that I grew up with coming in as Hall of Famers, and that's kind of cool to know that, dudes that I really liked and guys that I really, looked up to or really enjoyed watching as a kid or as, I was kind of growing in my NBA fandom, starting to go in the Hall of Fame. So it's kind of cool when that sort of happens. So it's kind of aligning with me for the first time in a while. I mean, before there had been, of course, Hall of Fame classes with guys that I was well aware of, but this one really felt like it was one where I was like, oh yeah, all these guys have a profound effect on me in one way or another.
Yeah, well, it's funny because these guys basically started their career when I was, 18, 19, 20. So now I'm, they're not quite from my youth, but they're from, a very formative period in which I got back into the NBA into my mid-20s. And these are, most of the, these few classes are being the guys who really were central in that. So I'm feeling it from a slightly different perspective, but definitely a similar one.
Mm-hmm, absolutely, and then a few of the names we're going to talk about here, of course, are guys that, and one guy like a Grant Hill, who, when I was really, obviously a little bit younger, I was born in 1987, but he was one of these guys that, as, of course, everybody was looking for that next Jordan or whatever, the next person that was going to be in line to be the superstar of the NBA, and Grant Hill was that for quite a while, and obviously Ray Allen had a transcendent effect, and Steve Nash, and we'll talk about all these guys in a little bit, but yeah, these are some heavy hitters in the Hall of Fame this year. It's not, some years you get a class of guys that are obviously very good players, but not quite elite times, but there are some really heavy hitters in this one, guys that I couldn't wait to talk about a little bit.
Absolutely. So we're focused on the 6 guys who were who are mainly in for NBA reasons. Talking about them, we decided we'd talk about their greatest overall games and their greatest postseason games. So, yeah, I guess we've sort of stumbled into our summer series here, talking about greatest games or last greatest games, or find different angles to talk about that. It's been kind of just a fun way to do it. Of course, get to use Basketball Reference a lot. We filter these through searching through game score and obviously great stat lines as well, and then try to find some context about the games and kind of make our decisions that way. We don't just go by game score, but that's definitely our guideline here.
Yeah, see, I thought this whole episode we were going to do whole biographies about each one of these Hall of Famers, so I over-prepared a little bit, so that's fine. I also had the greatest games, but I thought we were also going to, I thought this would be a 6-hour show. I got my coffee ready. I thought we were like, all right, let's start with Ray Allen. All right, Ray Allen was born, 19, went to Kentucky, and then, okay. All right, so I guess I'll delete all that stuff. All right, that's fine. Yeah, we'll do the greatest game thing, too. Fair enough. I have that prepared as well, so that we could just do that instead. So.
Also, if you think Ray Allen went to Kentucky, I don't know how good a research
I meant UConn, I think. I guess my notes weren't very good, so it's a good thing I deleted them. So.
All right, yeah, good thing. Right. So, do you want to start off with
I watched all of He Got Game, Jason. Come on.
All of it, yeah.
God, I get it. Yeah. Copious notes, but I guess, all right, whatever.
Right.
Cool.
We'll have to do that, save that for a live show.
Yeah, that should be. Oh, that'd be a good one. I mean, last year, our Christmas show, we watched Space Jam and got drunk and talked about how shitty it is. In a few years, we'll be able to watch Space Jam 2 and talk about how shitty that one is.
Right.
Yeah, we need another. Do we ever do a good movie? I don't know if it's. We like our fun games and bad movies. I don't know. I wonder if it's not a good idea to do a good movie. So.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that goes. We'll have to workshop that one, see what happens. Yeah. Well, I imagine Space Jam 2, like everything LeBron does, will be better than what Michael Jordan did.
Oh,
I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
At Over and Back NBA, if you want to find us on Twitter. At Jason3. All right, let's get to this guy. So we'll start with Ray Allen.
Ray Allen, yes.
Okay, all right. Let me delete my He Got Game notes. Okay, so this best overall game. 2007. This is January 12th, 2007. Seattle Supersonics 122, Utah Jazz 114. A throwback here with Seattle Supersonics. 54 points is actually the career high for Ray Allen on 72.4% true shooting, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, and 0 turnovers. So it's a pretty interesting game for this franchise at the point because this was the second highest scoring mark that the Sonics had ever had. The previous high came in March 23rd, 1974, and Fred Brown, a guy we've talked about many times on the show, had 58 points. The game is pretty fun as well. Allen scores 18 points in the fourth quarter and hits and gets 15 of those points in the final 5 minutes. Some other fun stuff about this too. He's a perfect 12 for 12 from the free throw line and 8 for 12 from 3-pointers. So, which I found kind of funny because I'm thinking 8 through 12, yeah, okay, whatever. And I just started doing a little bit of research on this. This is where it's kind of funny. Is 8 threes in a game seems routine, these days. There was 30 times last year that happened. 5 times Steph Curry did it himself. But by the time that this game happened in 2007, just to show you how much the NBA has changed in such a little time, only 118 times in NBA history had a player made 8 or more threes in a game, and only 62 times did a player do it with on 12 or fewer shots. So it's not just guys chucking; it's guys efficiently shooting threes or whatever. Unsurprisingly, Ray Allen had the most of those games to this point with 8. 8 or more threes in 8 games for Ray Allen. But yeah, kind of funny. 30 times last year and then 118 times from 2007 until, 1983 or whatever it had happened. But
right.
Yeah. So now it's just routine. I mean, 8 threes in the game is not super routine, but Steph Curry did it 5 times alone last year, where at that point Ray Allen had only done it 8 times in his career, but still a pretty good record there. And also at this point, some other names here. Dennis Scott was second at this point with 7 games with 8 or more threes. And then George McLeod, our good friend George McLeod. I don't know why I said my good friend. I don't know if George McLeod is actually a friend. I mean, are you? I shouldn't. Not speaking for myself. Is George McLeod your good friend?
He might be my best friend.
Okay, great. Because we're just kind of casual acquaintances. Me and the Cloud. But I'm glad to know that you you are indeed best friends with George McLeod, which I thought he was third with 6 of those types of games. So pretty good there. After the game, Ray Allen definitely confident. Says people want to know what the zone is like, and if I could have tape and show people, this is what it's like. You can't explain it; it just happens. So Ray Allen in the zone. Teammate Nick Collison, yes, he used to be a valuable player. He wasn't just a guy at the end of the bench. He said, "Oh yeah, Nick Collison still plays." He scored 25 points and had 13 rebounds. This is his 3rd straight double-double at this point, too. So Nick Collison, competent player at this point. This also helped competent team, not the Seattle Supersonics, because this outburst by Ray Allen and Nick Collison helped Seattle avoid a 7th straight loss. And this was in the midst of Ray Allen's final season in Seattle. He was scoring at a career-high mark. He finished the season at 26.4, but Seattle was really having some trouble. At this point in the year, they were 14-25, and they would end the campaign 31-50, and there would only be one more season in Seattle before they would move to OKC. So this was the year that allowed them to get bad enough to get Kevin Durant, and then, of course, move on to OKC in another year. So kind of sad ending to the Ray Allen's Seattle tenure and kind of Seattle in general. But yeah, they were no good at this point, and it'd be a little while till this franchise was good again as well.
Yeah, and they were. They had been good as recently as a couple years before. I think we talked
they
about
won 50 games pretty routinely around this time.
Exactly, yeah. So, they actually 31 wins is not obviously good, but it's not usually terrible enough to get the number 2 pick. But that was kind of a weird year where the Blazers moved up, the Sonics moved up, and I think the Hawks moved up as well. All those teams moved up. It was an unusual situation. I think that was your Boston tried to tank and then ended up getting 5th or something. But then they ended up getting big 3 anyway. So worked out okay for them.
Who did Atlanta get that year? Why am I blanking on?
Horford.
Okay, I was going to make fun of them, but that's actually a good pick. Okay, darn, I was really hoping it was like
Sean Williams or Martin Williams. Right. There's a lot of picks from that time to make fun of. So Horford.
Yeah, that's true. That's one of the good ones that worked out quite well for them. So good for them. It's actually kind of a fun draft as well. So other than Odin, I'm kind of looking at it now. You have Kevin Durant number 2, Al Horford number 3, Mike Conley number 4. Jeff Green. So these are all competent players still playing a little bit. Yi on Leon number 6, maybe not so much there, but I like Yi on Leon. But Corey Brewer, serviceable player. I don't know if he's the number 7 overall pick.
Right.
Joakim Noah number 9. The player until a few years ago when his knees fell off. And it's Thaddeus Young comes number 12. I mean, there's some solid players in this. Not a lot of real big superstars other than Kevin Durant and essentially Al Horford, but some good stuff in there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Marc Gasol, number 48. in the second round. So
there you go.
There you go.
Yeah, that worked out pretty well as well. Yeah. I think obviously the more memorable performance, as it generally would be, is his. One of the great playoff games of all time, honestly, especially in recent memory. The triple overtime was it triple or double overtime? I'm sorry.
This one was triple. I believe.
Triple overtime.
So
yes.
This was a nuts playoff series as well. This is the Boston-Chicago playoff series from 2009. Just absolute insanity. This entire series.
Yeah, and 3 of the first 5 games in this series went to overtime. Game 4 went to 2 overtimes. Every game, was extremely, extremely close. This one was Chicago 128, Boston 127. 51 points for Ray Allen, which is a playoff career high. 73 true shooting percentage, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 9 of 18 from 3, 6 of 7 from the free-throw line. 3 points shy of the Celtics' playoff record, and at the time was a playoff all-time high with 9 3-pointers. This ended up the Bulls ended up actually winning this game because this was Game 6. This led the Bulls to the upstart Bulls, the first year for Derrick Rose, I believe. To force a Game 7 in the Eastern Conference first round against the formidable Celtics. Of course, Kevin Garnett was out for the series, so they were not quite as formidable as usual, but it was definitely a great battle of youth versus age, and just this being just the year after the Celtics had won the championship, so out to defend their title. Even they were still obviously really good even without Garnett. So, so many fantastic highlights from this game.
Yeah, there's some great stuff. I think the best, though, is going to be the final few minutes of the second overtime, and that's when Ray Allen really went to work here. Celtics were leading 113-111. Then Glenn Davis scored. They went a little cold, though. Bulls grabbed the lead. John Salmon's a name that's from the past. When I was watching this game, John Salmon's takes over this game for the Bulls. It's quite a thing to see John Salmon's out there, doing some stuff. But he responds to the 3-pointer, puts Chicago ahead. He makes it a 3-point game with a driving layup with 2 minutes left, and it stayed that way until Allen, with his toes touching the arc, he buries a jumper from the right corner. That pulls Boston within 116-115, 20 seconds remaining. Brad Miller on his second run with the Bulls, hits 2 free throws to make it a 3-point game, but then Allen was not finished. He dribbles to his left and buries a 3-pointer over Heinrich to tie it with 7.6 seconds left. So, this is always, I remember this game vividly watching it live and just being like, well, you got to foul Ray Allen at this point. You don't want Ray Allen to take a 3-pointer. I mean, it's fucking Ray Allen. He's probably going to make a 3. And always the wise coach, Vinny Del Negro, decides, we'll take our risks with Ray Allen and taking a 3. And guess what happened? Ray Allen took a 3 and he scored. And, to put it to triple overtime. And then this is also the game where Joakim Noah had his famous steal and run down the court, foul and one, dunk or whatnot. So there's always a lot of good stuff. But this game is incredible, and this series is incredible. This was on Hardwood Classics a few weeks ago. And I know they show it every so often as well because it is a really, really great one. But Ray Allen had a masterful game, as you said, 51 points, also 7 from 3, the free throw, and then 9 of 18 from 3. But really great game with that second overtime really being the deciding factor, where he comes out and scores their last 5 points and really saves the game, and really in some ways may have saved their season. Of course, they still ended up losing the game, but I think they ended up having a little bit more of a fight in them, and of course being able to take it to a Game 7 was important.
And I think there's an honorable mention performance that's worth noting from 2005, the Sonics and Kings in the playoffs. I believe this. I think the Kings made the playoffs one more time after this. I guess the Kings have made the playoffs more recently than the Sonics have, but I'm not 100% sure about that, actually. Which the fact that I'm not 100% sure about that says a lot. But yes, Ray Allen, 45 points, 75 true shooting, 6 of 4 from 3, 5 of 5 from the free throw line. Also, 6 assists, 4 steals, and 2 blocks. Match performance against the Kings. This was, I believe, this was a first round series. This was the same playoffs where the Sonics gave the Spurs a tougher than expected fight, the Jerome James series, as we like to call it. Who was also stout in this game. But yes, this is sort of the last legs of the sort of the old, early 2000s Kings. They'd already traded Chris Webber, but they still had Stojakovic. They still had Mike Bibby. They also had and Bobby Jackson, Brad Miller. They also had Coutinho Mobley and Kenny Thomas. So interesting little team there. But yeah, that was kind of I think they ended up trading because they traded Sojkovic for Ron Artest, I believe, the next season, and that
yes,
was kind of. I think they played the playoffs one more time. I think they had Bonzi Wells in that team too. Now that I think about it, so
yes, so I did unfortunately find out that the 05-06 Kings made the playoffs. They lost in the first round,
and the Sonics
and the Sonics did not. So the Kings were 1 year ahead of the Sonics, but still pretty pathetic, all things considered. That it still has been that. So yes, the Sacramento Kings used to be in the playoffs. We promise it was a thing.
Yes.
They were a team that was sometimes competent. We promise.
Right. The Bobcats have made the playoffs more recently than the Kings.
There we go. There it is.
Yes. I bet, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I bet the New Jersey Nets have made the playoffs since the Kings did as well. So we'll have to verify.
Yeah, let's find out. Let's find out about the old New Jersey Nets. Yes, 06-07, the New Jersey Nets made it to the Eastern Conference semis. That was Lawrence Frank's not his final season. Not mind, it was right in the middle of Lawrence Frank year, but yeah, they did. That was the okay. Kid was still there. Okay, Kid was still there. Carter,
yeah, they were okay. Yeah,
Nenad
sure.
Krishtik. We can't
forget. Yeah,
and our actual good friend Cliff Robinson was on that team as well.
Oh, absolutely. You know. Yeah. All right. Well, are you suggesting that George McLeod and I are not friends?
No. Well, me and George McLeod are not friends. As I said,
okay,
Cliff
right.
Robinson are friends. You and George McLeod are, if not the best friends. It's weird. It's kind of conflicting there, where I don't know who we consider the team best, or our team, who our best friend is between George McLeod and Cliff Robinson. So
right, our combined best friend is of course Jason Richardson.
Yes,
yes, right. You know, so. Anyway, moving on to Maurice Cheeks. About time you made the Hall of Fame. And
yeah, what the hell? 2018 is when we put Mo Cheeks in the Hall of Fame? What are we doing here?
It's a little weird. Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe we'll be able to get some of the older guys. Maybe our Jack Sikmas, maybe our Bobby Dandridges. Maybe guys from that era that seem to have gotten lost in the shuffle and are inexplicably not in the Hall of Fame. Are going to be able to make it in, with Mo Cheeks being in there. Of course, he's, been active coach in his career. These guys been around, kept his name out there. So, of course, the clips of him helping that girl with the national anthem, all kind of popped around. So, he does some nice things. So, not the best coaching career, but that's not what this is about. This is about a great playing career. And, his best performance, game score does not have pre-83 stats for him, at least for most games. There are a few exceptions, but so the best one that we could find, and it's interesting because it's part of a very a notable stretch of his career of top game scores. But this is from February 11th, 1987. It was a loss to the Detroit Pistons, 123-113. He had 31 points on 71 true shooting, 4 rebounds, 12 assists, 6 steals, and 4 turnovers. But with all the other stats there, that's still pretty important. He and center Tim McCormick, who had 20 and 11, stepped up with Irving and Barkley both ineffective in the game. Interestingly enough, also, Bill Laimbeer had a 30-20 game here, which it was the 10th highest game scorer of his career. So the standout one for Laimbeer. And if you look at Cheeks' top 3 game scores, they were all in a 15-day stretch from in 1987. So the number 3 was on February 18th. He had 25, 7, 14, and 5. And then the number 2 was on the final date on February 26th was 28, 5, 11, and 4. He was 12 of 14 in that game from both the field and the free throw line, which I thought was a neat, stat.
If you could do a query on that, that'd be awesome to see guys that have the exact same line from the free throw line. Obviously, more than 1 of 1 or 2 of 2 or whatever.
Right.
That'd be pretty funny to see.
Yeah. And actually, this game is on YouTube. I will try to remember to put a link to it. It's actually really, really good quality. And I watched the pregame, and then I kind of had it on while I was doing other things throughout the commentary for most of it. And there was really no notes, and these were Philly announcers that he was going on there was no note that he was on a career best stretch here. That there was nothing that was apparently seen as unusual about this. I mean, they are very good, not necessarily remarkably awesome stat lines. They're really good for his career, obviously, but it's just interesting to see what what was seen versus kind of what we can look at now, as kind of a basis of comparison.
Yeah, it's this is a game that I was able to check out a little bit when you put it in the notes, and yeah, it's rare that you get because there are obviously plenty of games on YouTube. They're kind of chopped up and they're a little bit weird, but this one is in pretty decent quality as well. A lot of times the audio either sounds like crap or whatever, but this one looks really pretty well, and it's pretty awesome when you can watch a game like that and consume it and stuff, and anything that keeps the pregame too. I love that aspect of it as well. Just the other and one thing I really do enjoy about this, and it's like you said these are Philly announcers. A lot of times when you watch some of the older games and you find them on YouTube, they tend to be like kind of the local broadcast. Like I remember I was watching a Utah Jazz game and it was like the Salt Lake City announcer, and it's cool because like usually my consumption of NBA has been national, other than the teams that I of course watch, like the Bulls are ones that I watch locally. But it's kind of cool to hear these announcers that I've really never heard before and get like a local, because I think you get a whole different sense of kind of the tenor around players when you listen to their normal announcing. Except for in this case, like you're saying, Cheeks is on a career best record. Everyone's just like, yeah, whatever, okay, whatever. Not like any big deal that Maurice Cheeks is just having this incredible run of his career. But no, I do enjoy the. YouTube's incredible, just the stuff that's on there, and I hope that more and more just keeps going up there over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this game was cool because the pregame stuff, as you mentioned, this was Julius Erving's retirement year, so he was having big tour, big ceremonies, and they had they had a really long pregame ceremony in San Antonio with talking about his ABA days and talking about how important he was to surviving the ABA, and they gave him like a pair of cowboy boots, and and the PA announcer in San Antonio was clearly knew a lot about his career. I think he dated back to the ABA days and really did an excellent job of talking about him and his legacy, and then Irving's book. He didn't play in the game because of injury, so he was in a suit. But it was cool to see. That was definitely check it out if you get a chance.
Yeah, definitely.
So, best playoff game, there were a couple options here. Officially, in terms of game score, the Game 2 of the 1980 finals, it was a Philadelphia 107-104 win in Los Angeles. It tied the series at 1-1. Cheeks had 23 points on 80 true shooting, 4 rebounds, 10 assists, 6 steals, and 3 turnovers. Interesting game here because the Sixers actually led significantly in the fourth at 20 points, and the Lakers were able to trim the lead to 105-104. Bobby Jones hit a jumper with 7 seconds left to seal the win. I couldn't find exactly what Cheeks did in the fourth quarter here, but obviously a stout stat line, and obviously he was only his second season at that point. One of the most important games of his career, and a chance at the time for the Sixers to take one game in LA and go back home and have a chance to take a series. That didn't work out for them, of course, but certainly put them in that position. The honorable mention game is from Cheeks' rookie season. It's from the Eastern Conference semifinal, Game 4. This is the Spurs and the 76ers, back when the Spurs were in the Eastern Conference. They beat them 115-112, and Cheeks had 33 points on 68 true shooting, 6 rebounds, and 9 assists. And this is, as a rookie who was picked in the second round, not expected really to contribute all that much. And then, being a point guard for a team that, had just made the finals a couple years before, it was still, they would lose this year, but they were a strong playoff contender and would, go on to championship contention very soon. The Sixers actually were down because of this game. They lost and were down 3-1, but they didn't end up taking the series 2-7 games before losing the final game 118-101.
Yeah, and avoiding. Thankfully, the Spurs avoided years and years of memes and tweets being directed in their way. But yes. It could have been bad for the old San Antonio Spurs. But thankfully, they avoided the Twitter embarrassment of losing 3-1, losing 3-1 leads. So good for them that they could do that. But move on now to Jason Kidd, and Jason Kidd's best overall game that we could find was 1996. This is January 12th, 1996. Dallas 140, Phoenix 130. Now the guessing game is, what team was Jason Kidd playing for? Jason, would you like to play?
Well, I can see it here in the notes, so I will guess that he was playing for the Knicks.
You are wrong. No, indeed, he was playing for Dallas at this time. But it's all right. I mean, it's all right. It's cool. But anyway, thank you for everybody for playing along with what team was Jason Kidd on in this game. But Kidd was still playing for Dallas. This is his second year. He'd be traded to Phoenix 22 games into the following season, though. So this was the beginning of the end for his Dallas tenure. But as far as this game on January 12th, 1996, 33 points on 82% true shooting, 16 assists, 12 rebounds, and 6 turnovers. We'll ignore the 6 turnovers. Who cares? 16 assists, 12 rebounds, 33 points. That's all cool. Interestingly enough, one of only 51 30-plus, 15-plus, 10-plus rebound triple-doubles ever. And then there's only been 13 since Kidd did it in 1996. I found that the most interesting, is that there wasn't more of those that have kind of happened. As you could probably assume, Russell Westbrook, this seems like a Russell Westbrook line. He has 5 of those since Jason Kidd did it in 1996. LeBron only has it twice, though. I found that kind of funny that you would assume LeBron might have had a little bit more of those. But yeah, he only has 2. Russell Westbrook has 5, and only 13 have done it since Jason Kidd did it in 1996. Oscar Robertson is the all-time leader in these 30-plus, 15-plus, 10-plus triple-doubles. He has 16. So Oscar Robertson, good at a lot of parts of basketball. So this wasn't the first scoring outburst for Kidd, though, this year, but one of his most efficient. Kidd's career high came in 2001. He was a member of the Suns at that point. He scored 43 points. In that game as well, in this game, rather, I should say, teammate Tony Dumas also exploded for 39 points in this game for Dallas. Kidd's real emergence as a star came this year as well. In 1996 is when he really became what we all kind of know Jason Kidd to be, as the first of his 10 All-Star games. He was also voted as an All-Star starter in this year as well, so it's pretty cool. And Mavericks, the prior year had seen tremendous improvement, but things really fell apart this season. Mavericks stumbled out of the gates. At this point, in January 12th, they were 10-23. They'd finished season 26-56. Everybody hated each other. Kidd would be gone after the next year, and then the Mavericks would obviously float in obscurity for a few more years until Dirk came to town and Nash came to town, and everything kind of worked out a little bit better. But this was, it looked like they had gotten everything together. They had Jim Jackson, they had Jamal Mashburn, they had Jason Kidd. They saw one of the biggest, single season improvements the year prior, and then the wheels all fell off this year, and it took a while for it to come back. And Kidd obviously played a part in that as well, with being kind of adding some drama to that, in the locker room, and adding some beef with Jim Jackson and Mashburn, all those sort of guys. But it's one of my, a team that I really love, and I really wish they would have stayed together for a little bit, because they were awesome to watch on the court, and they looked like they could really do it. But it didn't, obviously did not work out for the 90s Mavericks.
You know who we do not blame for the Mavericks' troubles in the 90s?
Don Nelson?
My best friend George McLeod. My best friend George McLeod. Yeah.
All right, good. Yeah, no, okay. Yeah. Because he didn't. No, it was not George McLeod's fault. I'm sure he was all good on the up and up.
Yeah. He didn't have the best game here. only 10 points on 3, nice shooting, 0-3 from 3. But, maybe Kidd was too busy, giving assists to, 16 other players. Well, not 16 other players, but, the other players in this team, rather than, I guess Tony Dumas got the love here. 6-9 from 3. Yes. Yeah, but, 15-9 from the field. Probably his best game, I would imagine.
Yeah, so good for those guys. Yeah, Tony Dumas, of course, probably his best game. And George McLeod, good, because, as long as you're not getting involved with Tony Braxton, you're probably okay. That's like, you know what I mean? It's like George McLeod's like, I'm too old for that shit, man. Yeah. I'm just out here to play ball, guys.
Yeah. Right.
I know I acted like George McLeod's like a 41-year-old at this point. Like, oh man, I'm just out here trying to get these checks. It's like, all right, well, it's still like a pretty young player at this point. But
he's probably more of an en vogue guy anyway. So
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, he's better than Tony Braxton.
Yeah,
he knows that.
Right, exactly.
That's a nice poll to invoke. All right, so playoff career best.
Rich, I was afraid that you were never going to get it.
Oh no, damn it. All right, that's it. Who cares? Steve Nash, he was in the Hall of Fame too. We're done. We're out of here. I'll play the music. Grant Hill, he went to the Hall of Fame too.
All right, those guys.
All right, hold on. Okay, I'm back. All right.
Cool.
Wow. May 22nd, 2003. New Jersey Nets, Detroit Pistons. New Jersey wins 97-85. Jason Kidd has 34 points, his playoff career high on 64% true shooting, 6 assists and 12 rebounds. He was 11-13 from the free throw line in this game. That's a vital win for the Nets, who were in the driver's seat in the 2003 Eastern Conference Finals. They went up 3-0 with the win. New Jersey would eventually sweep the Pistons and move on to their second straight NBA Finals. And this is interesting because they're always considered, this Nets team, and I'm guilty of it as well, of just kind of laughing and be like, oh, geez, well, they kind of, somebody had to emerge from the East or whatever and just go to get pounded by either the Spurs or the Lakers or whatever. But the Nets were really dominant. That might speak more to the lack of quality in the Eastern Conference, but still, they won in 6 games against Boston, or against the Bucks. They swept Boston and swept Detroit before going to the Spurs and obviously getting swept there. But, I think that's still pretty I mean, that's a dominant performance to sweep Boston and sweep Detroit. And we knew that, Detroit would be kind of a sleeping giant there in a few years. Boston would obviously have, had some pretty good years prior to that. And, winning in 6 versus a pretty stout Bucks team, too. So I think we sort of laugh at the Nets in this period because, somebody had to emerge from the East and it just happened to be them. But they weren't like a bad team at all. I mean, they were a dominant team in the Eastern Conference for sure at this time.
Yeah, they were, they were a pretty good team, and actually they took the Spurs to 6 that year.
That's right. Yeah, they didn't.
So,
they got swept by the Lakers. Yeah. You're right. Yeah, they did. Yeah, so it was a pretty decent series actually. Shockingly.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, it was clear the Spurs were better, but they gave them a tough fight. That was.
Don't watch any of the games though. We cannot recommend any of the games being consumed for public consumption.
Yeah.
So don't do that. But
not a peak for NBA aesthetically for sure.
No, definitely not.
If you want to see baggy shorts, yes, then
yes,
it's definitely peak baggy shorts era. But
yeah, no, definitely, and Aaron Williams, lots of Aaron Williams. If you really like Aaron Williams, you'll like that series.
Yeah, a whole lot of Aaron Williams. Yes.
Honorable mentions here. April 27th, 2007, Kidd has a playoff career 19 assists, playoff career high 19 assists and 16 rebounds against Toronto. May 14, 2007, Kidd grabs a playoff career high 17 rebounds against Cleveland. Unfortunately, he shoots 2 of 12 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3, and has as many fouls as points, but 17 rebounds. That's kind of cool. And then last but not least, 4/16, 2011. We have jumped quite a few years here. Kidd has transformed his career and transformed the way he plays. He had 6 of 10 from 3 in a huge win over Portland as the Mavs marched towards the NBA Finals and then an eventual NBA championship, the one and only one for Jason Kidd as well. But yeah, this is when he became Jason Kidd 3-point shooter, which I never ever thought would happen, but it happened and it was a real thing and it was pretty cool too.
Yeah, it's weird how that went from such an extreme weakness to an extreme strength later in his career. That was kind of what kept him around. I mean, obviously he does all his other skills, but that kind of kept him as his overall game declined. He was able to he had that 3-point shot that kind of kept him able to be playing more than you would have expected a guy with his skills to have, because usually guys who can't shoot have a tough time as they age. So to be able to develop that is pretty incredible.
Yeah, no, and it was, I mean, he played a huge role in this Mavs team as well. I mean, that spot up threes, I mean, that arguably is as important as anybody else. Of course, Dirk obviously being the most important, but yeah, Jason Kidd becoming like a knockdown, lights out 3-point shooter was something nobody expected. And it took forever for people to actually, because he'd be open from 3 and you could see people were like, yeah, that's Jason Kidd, whatever. And it's like, no, I can shoot threes now. Like, it's pretty nuts. And maybe, not the first one, obviously, but one of the more pronounced guys that and we see it now all the time where guys will change their game and adapt to the 3, Brook Lopez or whatnot. Guys that are sort of finding their skills eroding and then decide to pick up the 3 and that become their real thing. But Kidd feels like one of the first really super important guys that was just like, nope, I found the best way to keep my career alive is just shoot more threes. Like, even though he was not that at all, it became, as you said, a real big weakness that he turned into an absolute strength as well. So
yeah. So next we have Steve Nash, and his best overall performance was a pretty famous game, also involving Jason Kidd, as we'll find out. December 7th, 2006, Phoenix in double overtime, beating the Nets 161-157, and Nash had 42 points on 77 true shooting, 6 rebounds, 13 assists, and 3 turnovers. He actually had 9 of his points in the second overtime to help seal the win. And this set his regular season career high, although he would actually tie that 15 days later against Washington, where he would have 42, 3, and 12. It would be his 8th best game score. So interesting little flurry in his during this time for him in his career. This actually was after his 2 MVP seasons, and a lot of people think that his 2007 season was actually the best of his career. It was certainly comparable to those MVP seasons, but he may have been at his peak at that point at age 32, almost 33 at this point. So, and this also happens to be the 5th highest game on Jason Kidd's game score list. He had 38, 14, and 14 in this game, speaking of big stat lines. But this is a classic game. Looking back at the ESPN recap of the game at the time, there were 34 lead changes and 21 ties. Mike D'Antoni's quote was, "I think we can go home and turn on Classic NBA. It will be on there already. That's the best game I've ever seen." And Nash was able to hit a 3-pointer at the end of regulation to force overtime. And then Kidd had a shot at the end of first overtime, went halfway down, and then fell out to keep the game going. The game had 224 shots, 27 three-pointers, which of course was a lot more at the time than it is now, 57 fouls, and only 29 turnovers, which, 2 overtimes, fast pace, that's a relatively low amount. And the last tie in the game was at 157 with 33 seconds left. Kidd got a three-point play, but then Nash got his 13th and final assist with a little pass to Dia for a short shot in the lane, and then Nash later hit 2 free throws to seal the game. So obviously a remarkable game overall. This is one that's kind of talked about in terms of some of the best overall regular season games in NBA history.
Yeah, it's a really great one if you've never seen it. And I know the NBA Classic, I mean, I don't know if they played it that night, Mike, but I believe they still do play it sometimes here and there. But yeah, 34 lead changes, 21 ties. It's just an awesome back and forth. And more than that, just seeing Jason Kidd and Steve Nash really, as you said, going back and forth. And it's one of Kidd's best games. It's one of Nash's best games. And it feels like their games too. If you watch it, that these two dudes are just dueling, going back and forth. And there's some extra weight to it with those two guys understanding where they were at this point in their careers and what they represented, being, the best point guards arguably of that entire generation. So really fun game to watch. And yeah, it's fun to see this Nets team sort of open up a little bit. And of course the Suns at this point were just a joy to watch as well. So yeah, really, really fun game if you ever get a chance to check it out.
Yeah, definitely. And the fact that, of course, they've been teammates, with each other and, had roughly parallel, years of their career and often compared to each other. Yeah, definitely a great standout for both guys. Yeah. So best playoff performance is from May 20th, 2005. It is Game 6 of the Western Conference Semifinals. A 130-126 win for Phoenix against Dallas. The Suns sealing the series with this win. And Nash had... we probably don't need to do the guessing game here on which team that Nash played for. You want to guess?
I know all too well, unfortunately, because I was obviously a big Mavericks fan at this time, and I know that he had left for the Suns at this point. And
not the Lakers though. He's not on the Lakers. No. Okay. All right.
Warriors. His Warriors practice squad.
Right.
Whatever.
Yes. Exactly. Yes. So
Lakers. He never played for the Lakers. What are you talking about? That never happened. So
okay.
Steve Nash, Lakers. Come on, what are you? You're nuts, Jason. What are you
talking
about?
Ridiculous, doesn't
That's
it?
never happened. Yeah. That's not. That would not be fun at all if he went to the Lakers. It would not be fun in any level whatsoever. So there's no way that happened. So
obviously not. Yes, so he had left Dallas for Phoenix in the prior offseason, had won the MVP, now battling his old team in the playoffs. 39 points on 73 true shooting, 9 rebounds, 12 assists, 4 turnovers, but in 15 minutes, that's not too bad given how much he handles the ball. It's actually his second best overall game score, really remarkably high on his overall list. He was able to make his final 5 shots in the game and had 8 points in the final minute of regulation and 7 more in overtime. So really scoring flurry toward the end. Of course, you don't necessarily think of Steve Nash. Obviously, he has great ability to shoot and great ability to play make, but you don't necessarily think of him as a guy who's going to go out there and gun and have just like a scoring flurry. But at least in this game, he absolutely did that.
Yeah, and it was and I was going to say just an incredible way to cap off his MVP season as well, or not cap off his MVP season, but put maybe a little bit more of a stamp on the MVP year for sure.
Yeah, and they were able to, the Suns, they were down 16, fairly late in the game. Nash hit a three-pointer to force overtime, and then made the three that put the Suns ahead for good in the overtime, and Dirk Nowitzki's quote was, he made some unbelievable plays, not only today to win the game, but in every game they won. I've never seen him play better than this. I think he really wanted to show all of Dallas what we missed, and he really did that. So, and obviously they have a very close friendship with each other even today. And from the New York Times recap here, pointed out that Nash scored more than 30 points in each of the final 3 games of the series, including a career-high 48 points in Game 4, which we'll get to in a moment. And during the regular season, he scored more than 30 points just twice. And his averages over the 6-game series, 30.3 points, 12.0 assists, and 6.5 rebounds. So obviously pretty stout. And I wanted to mention that 48-point game as an honorable mention here because it happened in the same series. It was obviously very important. The stat line there, 48 points on 81 true shooting, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, and 9 turnovers. But yet it was still his third best overall game score of his career, including both playoffs and regular season. So obviously a remarkable game, 23 points in the third quarter. And another interesting thing is the Suns actually lost this game by 10 and were never closer than 9 in the fourth quarter. And I read about where the Mavs kind of intentionally tried to turn Nash into a scorer in this game, and that actually kind of played to the Mavs' hands because obviously they took him out of the game as a distributor and sort of took away the rhythm of the Suns' usual offense. And Nash obviously made the adjustment and was both an amazing scorer and playmaker for the final 2 games of the series.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a great series as well if you ever want to go back and check out and really see, because Nash, and in some ways unfairly, we've talked about this before on the shows, he gets kind of maligned for these MVP years because it's like, there were better players or guys that were a little bit more deserving, but it's just amazing to see, especially this playoff run. I know that didn't play a part in his MVP run, but you really see how important he was and how transcendent he was this year, completely transforming that team and really in some ways transforming the NBA at that point. I mean, the Suns came in like a fucking a dynamo. People had not seen anything like this in quite a while and never seen it done as efficiently, and I don't think that gets done without a Steve Nash type running the show. So no, this series in particular you see and you just go, oh yeah, this is probably why he's the MVP. I mean, he takes games over individually and just really does some incredible stuff that entire series and that entire playoff run and that entire season as well.
Yeah. And this leads to sort of an interesting piece from the Ringer that was written during Hall of Fame week, looking at kind of the idea of what if Nash had shot more in his career. And it talked to Mike D'Antoni and talked about Don Nelson, how he had tried to just get Nash to shoot like Nash wouldn't shoot for him, and then D'Antoni was like, hey, maybe I should have made him shot more. It was a 42.8% shooter from 3, and that might have actually even done more to bolster their offense. And obviously at the time they were a historically great offense. I think probably some of their efficiency records have been passed by the Warriors at this point, but obviously at the time he led the top offense in the league for 7 or 8 years, I believe. So I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think it just seems like on one hand, like I see because of what a tremendous shooter he was, that shooting more would be a good idea because you can shoot it that much. That's going to be good. That's going to be important. That's going to help your offense. But I don't know. I find it hard to imagine a gunner Steve Nash, and I also think that his skill. Although shooting was a tremendous part of his talent, he was such. He's one of the 2 or 3 greatest playmakers in NBA history. I would say pretty clearly, and the having him shoot more might take away some of that.
Yeah, I tend to agree as well, and I think one of the reasons why is if you watch a lot of his games of this era, especially the ones where he does shoot plenty of threes and he makes plenty of threes, but they seem to all come in the flow of an offense. They come with the understanding that Nash could play make at any point, could pass at any point, could roll off a pick and roll at any point, and that's sort of where he was able to get a lot of open shots. As guys would double team a rolling Amari Stoudemire, they'd see a cutting Sean Marion and put an extra man on him or whatever, and that gave Nash a little bit more of leeway. So I think you may take some of that away if it becomes an idea that, well, hey, Steve Nash is just going to pull up here. Let's not peel off onto Marion, or let's not peel off onto an Amari, or let's not put some extra help on Diaw. And I think a lot of it just seemed to come in the flow of the offense, and a lot of his open threes. He was a great shooter and an efficient shooter, but I think a lot of it was helped by his passing. You know what I mean? Like where people didn't get right up on Nash because you couldn't, because he would blow past you and get an awesome pass, or he'd blow past you and go to the rim, because he was so good at that too. I think that's one of the underrated things too, is his ability at the rim, both the left and the right, were just incredible, that he could finish with both hands so efficiently. But I think all that sort of made him a better 3-point shooter, where I think that maybe the idea that Steve Nash isn't going to pass as much, or that Steve Nash isn't going to drive as much, but Steve Nash is going to shoot more, might have hurt a little bit of all those aspects. I think what we got was exactly what we needed to get, and probably what was the best for them and the best for Nash at that point too. So to me, I can't wrap my head around Nash just coming down the court and just immediately chucking a 3. I don't know. I just don't like that nearly as much as I like what we got with Nash instead.
Yeah, right. It's an interesting thought exercise, and I do like to be able to look at these games where he kind of went off on score, and I think it adds to some mystery of like, oh, what would he have done that? You get some of those highlights, and it's fun to see. But yeah, I like the normal Steve Nash better than the idea of Steve Nash is trying to be kind of like a Steph Curry, because we got a Steph Curry, and I love Steph Curry, but don't know if I want like everyone to be like Steph Curry,
Yeah. And Curry as well is a guy who I think benefits a lot by his ability to drive, and that's a guy Nash too. Like we talk about Nash shooting, we talk about his passing. He's a great at getting to the rim, real crafty at getting to the rim, and Curry's that way too. I mean, that's one of the reasons what makes Curry so insane is that you can guard him from 35 feet, but then he's going to blow by you and hit a layup on you. He's one of the most efficient scorers at the rim, and Nash was one of those guys as well. So that always played a huge role in it. So yeah, I'm happy with what we got with Nash, and yeah, maybe he could have shot more, but I think I think more. I don't know. It's hard to explain because it's like, well, they were fine. They're like historically great offense. Like I don't know what else they would have done that was much better. And I think as well, being that Nash was what he was, and there's a highlight video when he got into the Hall of Fame a few weeks ago that was Nash's like best passes every single year of his career, and it's just insane to see the stuff he was doing. And be so like think of the other guys on his team too, like how much more fun it was to play with Steve Nash. It was just these passes. You're like, how do you even think of that? Like, how are you even? Where are your eyes going that you didn't even know to get to me? I think it just all worked a little bit better with him being more of a willing distributor, but not away from the shooting. Maybe earlier in his career he was a little bit less of an offensive threat, but in this time he really was able to balance both of those and be a good offensive threat while also still keeping on the playmaking. So I like Nash the way we got him. So I don't want to change the thing.
Fair enough. Next, probably a player whose career we might like to make some changes for would be Grant Hill, and obviously without the injuries in the early 2000s, he obviously was an incredible player in the late 90s and was still able to overcome those injuries and salvage a pretty good career in the second half and some memorable moments. But obviously, was even though he made the Hall of Fame, he could have. With the start of his career, it seems like he potentially could have been, maybe a top 25, top 30 level, player of all time. He seemed like he might be on that career track at the time, and obviously didn't quite accomplish that.
He's got too. If you haven't ever gone back and watched a lot of Grant Hill highlights, a really transcendent. I mean, I know there were some articles coming out about him being the first point forward, and that's not true at all. He definitely was not the first point forward, but a very dynamic guy that could do almost everything. I mean, it just was weird that you have a guy who was pretty well, pretty decent size, who could dribble well, who could drive well, who had good speed, who had good defense, who had good dunking ability. Grant Hill was kind of the all around player and seemed like the next step in the line of oh my God, Jordan was good, but this guy, he's a little bit taller and could do a little bit more, but of course, and he did for quite a few years, and we'll talk about those years in a sec here. But this was his best game ever in 1999. This is February 8th, 1999. Detroit Pistons versus the Washington Wizards. 106-103. For the Pistons, Grant Hill scores 46 points, a career high, 75% true shooting, 7 assists, 7 rebounds, 18 of 22 from the free throw line, 18 of 22. Most important point was Hill's go-ahead free throw with 13 seconds remaining. And interesting enough that he was able to get that scoring total without a single three made or attempted. He didn't attempt a three. He didn't make a three. And he still had 46 career points. I did a little bit of numbers on that. Since Hill did it, only 11 other times have we seen a guy who's a guard forward. I said, of course, there's plenty of centers who get 46 points that don't shoot threes or whatever. But in terms of a guard forward, only 11 times since Hill did it have we seen a guy score 40 without a single three-point attempt. Michael Jordan did it 4 times during his Wizards comeback. Iverson did it twice, and most recently Giannis Antetokounmpo did it in 2017 as well. So it's a very rare thing to score that many points as a guard forward and not shoot a single three. So pretty cool there. Teammate at this point, Jerry Stackhouse, he scored 29 points off the bench in 40 minutes. This is a weird time because I was kind of well, what the hell happened? Why was Jerry Stackhouse on the bench? And I come to find out that they just decided to use Jerry Stackhouse off the bench almost every game for whatever reason. This year, they used him off the bench a lot during his first few years in Detroit as well. So I don't know if they just didn't know what they had in Stackhouse, or the idea was that Stackhouse could be this dynamic scorer coming off the bench. I couldn't find any articles that talked about it, so I don't know if you remembered as well why Jerry Stackhouse was coming off the bench so often. Because in Philadelphia, I know he wasn't. He was a starter and one of the big guys, but in Detroit, for whatever reason, but he'd still play 40 plus minutes every game or whatever. But I thought it was kind of interesting him coming off the bench.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure it was obviously an intentional thing. I mean, you obviously want to get Mark Macon all the minutes that you can, but but yeah, I mean, no, I like I said, I'm pretty sure there was some tactical decisions going on there. I mean, maybe you try to, I mean, not that Hill and Stackhouse couldn't play together, but maybe you try to get Stackhouse in there when you don't have Hill to have another creator, in there, another dynamic kind of guy who does some of the same things, maybe obviously not quite as well, but Yeah, other than that, it does seem there's a reason why the Pistons were not necessarily the most exceptional franchise in the world during this time.
Yeah, no, and it seems like a good idea on principle, but it's like, it's your Stackhouse, man. Yeah. Just play, you know what I mean? Just like play him a lot because he's good and stuff. But no, it's pretty fun there. Third game of the season, and at this point, this is, of course, you're saying, what the hell? It's February 8th. That's because of the lockout, of course, is why it was only the third game of the season. Hill, ironically enough, was in the midst of a kind of an Iron Man streak in his career. He had played 80 games in 1996, 80 games in 1997, 81 games in 1998, and the entire 50-game season in 1999. So, yay, Grant Hill, never hurt. Oh boy, things are going to get weird here in a bit because he's going to always be hurt for quite a few years now after that. But before this game, Hill's previous high was 38 points in a 124-120 victory over Indiana, April 20th, 1997. So I'm sure he celebrated after that game. That's not true. Grant Hill was a very wise man. He would not use 420 to do anything but read the. I don't know what Grant Hill was doing. I'm sure, but whatever. All right, this as we mentioned, this Pistons team, not good but unique. It features a new star in Grant Hill, an emerging second star in Jerry Stackhouse, but then also vestiges of Pistons past. You have Joe Dumars, 34 years old, and Rick Mahorn, 39 years old, still left on the team. And also, I found this kind of interesting. This team also features players that always played like 35-year-olds. You have Theo Ratliff, who at this point was 24, but I'm positive still played like he was 35. Lindsey Hunter, who was always 34 years old, even though at this point he was 27. And Aaron McKee, who, believe it or not, was at one point 25 years old, even though I promise he played like a 33-year-old. So I like that. Theo Ratliff, Lindsey Hunter, and Aaron McKee were all on this team. And I'd imagine they were all limping down the court very slowly, even though they were in their mid to early 20s at this point. So I can't imagine Aaron McKee being spry. Like, there's no chance Aaron McKee was ever spry, right?
No. Yeah, I think Theo Ratliff was spry at one point. Like,
okay.
I think he was, I do think he was, like, kind of athletic and shot blocking and all that good stuff.
And I guess before Lindsey Hunter ate Aaron McKee, he was a little quicker too. But then Lindsey Hunter got a little enjoyed cooking in various towns that he was in. So,
well,
which I don't blame him, man.
Detroit, when it's cold in Detroit, what are you going to do other than have a nice meal? Have some soup. Have
a lot of soup.
Nice stew, very, very, very filling stew. Bread bowl.
Yeah.
Those bread bowls add up.
Yeah, it is. It probably was the bread bowl. I don't blame him. If I could eat a bread bowl every day, I would. But unfortunately, I don't want to be as fat as Lindsey Hunter was at the end of his career. So unfortunately, I can't eat a bread bowl because that also will burn 6,000 calories every night as well. But anyway, let's get to the playoffs here. This is 1999 for the Detroit Pistons. It's May 14th, 1999, Detroit. 103, Atlanta 82. Yes, Atlanta. We'll talk about them here in a sec. But interestingly, a big dip in his best playoff game score, Grant Hill's best playoff game score. It's a small sample at this point, obviously, for Hill, and it would be a small sample all time because he would make the playoffs a lot more years, with the Clippers and with the Suns later in his career. But it was all as kind of a role player and stuff. He wasn't really a featured guy. But yeah, it was kind of weird that you get a pretty big drop off in his peak from what he was able to do in the regular season to what he was able to do in the playoffs. But yeah, of course, we give the caveat that it was kind of a small sample. But in this game, 23 points, 9 assists, 6 rebounds, 62% true shooting. Just kind of circle back on there. Hill's playoff averages with Detroit, 15 games, 19.6 points per game, 6.9 rebounds per game, compared to his regular season totals of 21.6 points per game and 7.9 rebounds per game. So not a huge drop off, but a little noticeable as well. I mean, that 19.6 kind of stands out in the playoffs. You would assume that you would be a little bit more of a focal point and score a little bit more. But just over 15 games and still not really ridiculously different numbers, but still enough that you notice it. And the game scores definitely reflected it as well. A little bit less of the other stats, a little bit more of the turnovers and whatnot. I'm not saying Grant Hill was like a choker or anything like that, but just it was kind of interesting to see that there was that big of a dip between what he did in the playoffs and what he did in the regular season.
Yeah, his highest playoff game score was not among his top 100 overall game scores. Mm-hmm. And that was just unusual. Most guys had a game that was like, somewhere in the teens or 20s or 30s at least. And like I said, Nash, his second and third were both playoff games. So it stood out. I'm not saying it means anything, but I thought it was interesting.
And as far as this playoff series went, Detroit, they won this game, of course, as I mentioned, that even the Eastern Conference first round at 2-2. Hawks would eventually win the series 3-2. Pistons would fall in the first round the next year as well, and that would be Hill's last year in Detroit before he went to Orlando, and things went great for Hill in Orlando. Atlanta advanced to the Eastern Conference semis, where they were swept 4-0 by the Knicks, and this would be their last playoff appearance until 2008. So Womp womp for the Hawks. After being a pretty consistent playoff team for many, many years, they went away for quite a while and didn't emerge at all in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, the Pistons were actually a little better this year than I thought they were. They were at 29-21. So I guess playing Mark Macon, I guess, worked out pretty well for them.
Yeah, so here we're giving all this, we're giving them crap, and then here you go. They're showing us. So
yeah, there you go. So moving on. Next, we have Charlie Scott. And, of course, the great player for the Squires in the ABA and with the Suns and the Celtics in the NBA. And his best, of course, we don't have game score for his career, basically. So we have to go by what we have, and kind of looking at point totals and looking at and looking at some of his best stat lines and so forth. The ones that stood out were a game from 1972, from November 23rd, 1972, the Suns beating the Pistons 128-122, and Scott had 42 points on 68 true shooting, 10 rebounds, 15 assists. This was actually the very beginning of his second season with the Suns. He only played there 6 games in the previous season after he defected from Virginia of the ABA to Phoenix toward the end of the season, abandoning a team with Dr. J on it for, I guess, for greener pastures, or I guess if it's Phoenix, it's browner pastures.
Yeah, more sand. Sure maybe you really like sand. I mean, I like he likes the dry weather. I like the.
Yeah, he's the opposite of Anakin Skywalker. Yes.
You're in a good mood here. You're on fire here today. You better.
There you go. The quips are going.
Better start writing these stuff down. Yeah. You're killing it tonight. That you don't always. Not that you're not always on your A game, but I just mean tonight's
it's a good one. I'm glad to please. Hopefully, the listeners are enjoying themselves as well. Anyway, there are 60 recorded triple doubles with 42 or more points in NBA history by 22 players. So this is a pretty select company there for to have a triple double with this many points. And a fun fact that Charlie Scott had 7 40-point games in the NBA and 560 games total. And he had 27 in the ABA and only 147 games. So he had an easier time scoring in the ABA. I guess not a huge surprise there. But
yeah.
But in terms of his great playoff performances, one stood out, and it was actually in the ABA from April 10th, 1971. It was Game 6 of the ABA Eastern Conference Semis. The Squires of Virginia beat the New York Nets 118-114, and this sealed the win for the Squires. They beat the Nets. We only know that the point total here, which is 38 points. We don't have actually any other stats, but we do. Well, I guess it's not completely true because we know that he had 16 field goals, he had 1 3-pointer, and he was 5 of 8 from the free throw line. So we know that we don't know how many shots he took. We don't know rebounds or assists, but at least we know the number of field goals and the percentage from the line. So which is obviously the most important things to keep track of. But what I thought was notable about this game is definitely a scoring duel with Rick Barry of the Nets, who had 45 points. There's a lot of back and forth there. Scott had 25 points in the second half, including 18 in the fourth quarter. So obviously great down the stretch. We have a New York Times article from 1971 in the archives that kind of describes some of the action from the game. Talks about how his ability to beat Joe Dupre in one-on-one situations throughout the last quarter enabled the Squires to rally from behind, and talked about how time and again that he brought the ball up the court and worked behind the rim with Dupre guarding him, and was able to find split-second openings he needed to score after quick moves. And the game was tied 96-all when Scott drove around Dupre for the tying basket, and then with 50 seconds to go, and the Squires up by 3, Scott passed it inside to Doug Moe, who sank the game-clinching basket. So, based on the description there, with some clutch play, high point total, and a fun duel with Rick Barry, so I thought this was a good choice for that.
Definitely, and I know that for people that are, you're probably familiar, most of the people listening to this, you're probably familiar with a lot of the other guys we mentioned here, but Charlie Scott you might not know a lot about. I know that they the NBA put out a career retrospective video about him, and I know there's some other stuff as well. Not only NBA, but also street ball as well, doing in New York City, Rucker Park, stuff that he was pretty famous for, those as well. So if you get a chance, go check him out, because he's a really, really fun player, and one that, I'm assuming most of the people probably listening to this were not aware of him or have not seen much of his games. But definitely one to watch, and a very, very fun player, and a definitely deserving Hall of Famer for sure.
Absolutely, yes. Well, he was not picked for the Hall of Fame primarily on his NBA merits, but I just thought, why not look up Dino Radja's game scores and determine his best game of his career, since he's also a new Hall of Famer. He played a few years for the Celtics in the NBA, so we're going to go ahead and do that. A little bonus.
Dino Radja bonus. Who knew?
I know. It's big. And yes, Dino's top two are from the same month in March of 1994. His top game is from March 27th, in which he had 36 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, and was 12 of 15 from the field, and also 12 of 12 from the free throw line. So 36 points in that game, a 35.2 game score, and had a similar performance just a few weeks earlier against the Lakers. 36 points, 15 rebounds, and was 15 of 22 from the field, 6 of 8 from the line. So some great games there. He overall was more kind of a journeyman in the NBA. Obviously had a great international career, and congratulations to him to making the Hall of Fame. But just wanted to throw that out there for all the Dino Radja fans.
Yeah, and it would be interesting. The thing with Dino Radja, if you're not familiar, I mean, obviously we're not going to talk about it on this show because it would take quite a while, but the whole... Because he was signed initially to come to the Celtics, or he was drafted initially by the Celtics in 1989, and had all plans to come to the team around that year. There was issues with him getting out of his contract in Yugoslavia, and him having to go to Rome to play for a few years and stuff. But it would have been pretty interesting to see what he would have done, because, and by the time he came to the Celtics, he was obviously still in his prime, but it would have been fun to see him a few early years prior with that still pretty good Boston team, with, Larry Bird, with those sort of types, and see how much different his career would have been, because he comes to Boston, I think it was 1993 or whatever, and that's obviously a very different team now. It's your Rick Fox, Celtics, and it's not the same, level of Boston that it was when he first tried to come into the league. But that would have been fascinating to see what he would have done, because he had a pretty solid NBA career. Obviously not a great career, but loses 3 or 4 years that may have been pretty important to him. Maybe straight up making the Hall of Fame as an NBA player. We have no idea what those 3 years would have been, but definitely pretty interesting to see, because he was a very, very good European player at that point. Yeah,
absolutely. So pioneer. Congrats to him. Some a cool honor for him. Just we gotta give some Dino Radja some love. I mean, the Hall of Fame did it, but we have to give the cherry on top of the sundae, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. And by the whole thing with him in Yugoslavia, I mean, it went to like U.S. District Court and stuff. It was a complete disaster. It's like a really, really ridiculous thing that went on, because Yugoslavia did not want him out of his contract, and the Boston wanted him. It's kind of funny to see just these international teams sort of battling after each other. But definitely pretty interesting there if you ever get a chance to read about that or check it out. But Dino Radja, pretty prolific European player, and a pretty decent NBA player as well. So
yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's all we have for this show. Thanks everyone for checking us out. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Over and Back NBA. We are part of the Step Back at Fansided, so check us out there. Check all the great podcasts and articles that are going on as the season winds up, I guess. Is that the expression? I don't know. As the season gets into gear, we're going to have a lot of coverage of a lot of season previews and a lot of cool stuff. There's stuff going on there all year round, so definitely check it out, and give us a rating, review on iTunes or Stitcher, wherever you listen to your podcasts. We are on every major platform, and if we're not on one that you like, you let us know, and we'll get on there. So thanks for listening, and we'll be back again soon.